Hey everybody, we're going to be looking at adding negative integers today. What that means is adding two negative numbers together. Okay. As far as adding integers is concerned, this is probably it's not the easiest, it's not the hardest, it's pretty much right in the middle. What we're going to do is we're going to first compare adding negative integers to adding positive integers, and we're going to do that using a couple of different methods. So on your paper, I want you just to kind of have like the left side be for positive integers and the right side be for negative integers. So here we go. There's my line down my paper, and on the left side I'm going to be comparing what I do on the right side. So I have positive integers on the left and negative on the right. So here's how this is going to work. I want you guys to think about, first off, a very simple adding problem, something like this. If I gave you the problem 2 plus 3, okay, something that everybody should know, and of course you guys would all say that 2 plus 3 equals 5. Very well done. You guys are geniuses, okay? Now, here's what I want to do with this. I want to show you a couple of different ways of showing how you added this stuff together so that you can use that same method when you do negative problems, okay? One of the methods that you can try, and remember, this is not for everyone, it's just if it makes sense to you, then use it, okay? If we're adding 2 plus 3, we need to remember that 2 is really positive 2, okay? That's our first thing that we need to remember. What I want you guys to think about is this. If we were to represent positive 2 using positive signs, okay, we would need two positive signs to represent positive 2. The next part is this plus 3, okay, and again, 3 is positive, so if I wanted to represent that, I would be using 3 positive signs, okay? So this is positive 2 plus a positive 3. So if I'm adding 2 positives to 3 positives, how many positives do I have altogether? Okay? And this is fairly simple, like we said before. Altogether, if I added up all of these positives, I would have 5 positives, which is what our answer is over here on the right. Okay? So that's how that works. Another method that you could use, and we did this type of thing in class when we were doing mixed integers, is we can set up a t-chart, okay, where we have positives on one side, negatives on the other, and if we look at our problem, we have 2 and 3, and those are both positive numbers. So I have a 2 and a 3. I add those together, okay, remember once you get everything organized, you just add it together, and you're left with a positive 5. We had no negatives, so that means our answer is just positive 5, okay? So that's a couple of different ways that you can think about adding. One more that you could try, I just reminded myself of this. If you look at a number line, okay, we're going to kind of stick it in the middle here. I didn't leave much room. It's my fault. Let's look at a number line. So we have 0, and then all the numbers going up from there. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. If we look at this problem, if we were to add these together, 2 plus 3, what that means is we're going to start by adding from positive 2. That's our first point. That's the first value that we had in our problem up here at the top. And then it says to add 3. So if I'm adding, what you need to remember is that adding is a movement to the right. You're making the number greater. You're giving it extra value. So that means I can add 3 more places to the right because I'm adding 3, which leaves me at positive 5, which is what our answer was in our original problem. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back over onto the right-hand side, and we're going to do the exact same type of thing, but this time we're going to be using negative integers. So your problem that you're going to use is going to be negative 2 plus negative 3. Okay? Now some of you probably already figured this out, and that's fine, but I still want you guys to look at the process as we go through this. When you solve this, in our previous problem, we were using plus signs to represent positive numbers. Well, on this one, we have negative numbers, so this time we're going to use negative signs. So if we have negative 2, how many negative signs would we use for that? And hopefully you realize that we would use 2 negative signs. For negative 3, okay, even though it says add negative 3 or plus negative 3, we're looking at the value of the number, and our value of this number is negative 3, not positive 3. So we're adding 3 more negatives, okay? So there's our 3 more negatives. And just like before, we're going to look at what does all of this together equal. And if I have 2 negatives and 3 negatives, then altogether I'm going to have how many negatives? We can just count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. Okay, so our answer would be 5 negatives, which means our answer is negative 5. And that's a method that you can use when you're adding negative numbers. Let's look at the other methods. Okay, we're going to jump up and do number line next just because it's there. So let's use a number line and let's do the same thing. Okay, this time, since we already know the answer is going to be negative 5, I'm just going to put the 0 over here. Okay, so I have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So this time we're going to start at negative 2 because that's our first number that we had in our math problem. We had negative 2 right here. So we're going to start at negative 2, and this time it says to add, but instead of adding a positive, which means move to the right, it's saying add negative, which means make it more of a negative number, or something like that. Make the value of the negative greater. Okay, so we're adding a negative 2, and we're also adding 3 more negative values. So that means we're actually going to move to the left and add 3 negative numbers to the negative 2. And that leaves us right here, which our answer in this case is, again, negative 5. Okay, so once again we saw negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. The last part, once again, is our t-chart, where we have positives on one side and negatives on the other. So I have negative 2, so that goes on the right. I also have a negative 3, which also goes on the right. And if I add those together, I get 5, and since they're in the negative column, then my answer is negative 5. So there we have three really different methods of adding negative numbers so that we get the proper answer. And you can compare it to the positive numbers, and the rules are really exactly the same. If you have 2 positives, you add the numbers together, and the answer is positive. If you have 2 negatives, you add those numbers together, and your answer is negative. Okay, and that should just about do it. There you have adding with negative integers.